Our speaker this morning is Miss Gracia Basham. She's spoken here many times, and she's become one of my favorite storytellers. I always look forward to hearing what she has to say. It leaves me thinking and my spirits uplifted throughout the rest of my Sunday.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
As I drop everything. I came down the stairs this morning ready for church. My husband said, "My dear, your hair is lovely." He said, "But do you keep any squirrels in there?" I guess you get bonus points if you know what movie that's from. So I said, I'm going to hug everybody in the church but you, everybody. This is from The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. The greatest adventure is what lies ahead. Today and tomorrow are yet to be said. The chances, the changes, are all yours to make. The mold of your life is in your hands to break. And as a bonus, this is free, I'm going to tell you a story I wrote in honor of the Halloween season. The boat chugged slowly on the water. The sun was sinking quickly. A chill was rising off the water like fog. I knew I didn't have much longer before sunset. But the deserted boathouse, with its cracked and weathered timbers, beckoned for me to explore. All was quiet and still, save for the call of the geese echoing across the water. The motor spluttered a bit as waves rocked the boat. I shivered at the atmosphere of gloom and neglect and cobwebs, but my curiosity made me linger. There was something odd about this place, I was certain of it. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw the movement just before the bird exploded out of the boathouse, flying quickly past me. My heart raced and I laughed nervously. And then I saw it, just a glimpse at first. But it seemed that someone had left a pair of boots at the old boathouse. Small, leather boots. Rather old-fashioned, I thought, as I drifted nearer. How strange. The boots had buttons up the sides. And then I saw a hem of a skirt. Brightly, her eyes peered at me. Her white lace collar and the matching white bow in her hair seemed very out of date. I wondered that I'd not seen her before, as captivating as her eyes were. Mesmerized, I drifted in silence. And suddenly, my boat hit the edge of the dock. I was horrified, fearing that I would make the little girl fall down. But she stood there, not moving a muscle, as the boathouse rocked. She seemed to be floating motionless above the planks. I realized I could see the back of the boathouse through her outline. She was faded, like an old photograph, scarily translucent. And my voice caught in my throat. My mind raced. But I was frozen in my seat, even as the water began to fill the boat and covered my feet. It was the dock that must have punched a hole in the boat. The water rose higher, but I paid it no attention. I noticed that her hair was tangled, her boots half-buttoned. The hem of her dress was tattered and worn, as if no one had taken care of her. "I have been alone such a long time," she said, although her lips never moved. The water rose above my waist. I thought about the tender brushing I could give her hair. I could button her boots. I could mend her dress. She looked so small and frail, and I looked at her with pity. But something about her made me remember my own children. Did I have children? I seemed to have some sort of memory of my home, but it was vague and far away. No, I had no children. The mist rose around my face as the water rose higher. I began to forget the feel of sunlight. How could I resist the loneliness that I saw in her eyes? The water felt cool on my chin, and a feeling of peace surrounded me. She beckoned to me smiling. No fear, no regret, just a slow fog. My limbs had no strength. The effort to remember anything but this girl was too much. The pull she exerted, too strong. Poor little motherless one. The lake closed above me. How peaceful, how sweet. And you who remember me, take heart. I'm happy here in the shadowy boathouse. As I sit endlessly brushing my little one's hair, I want to give a warning to you who might wander too close to the boathouse. For we have not yet decided if we should add to our little family. Perhaps it will be you. Now, what is it about scary stories that some people love so much? What is it about that atmosphere that we can't stop listening to them? Even if it scares us, we have to finish the scary movie, the horror show. People love going to haunted houses. I went to a Christian judgment house, as they called it, where you went through and were scared with visions of sinners and a room that was supposed to be hell, and the final room where if you chose to be saved, there were angels. Scientists say that fear makes us feel incredibly alive. It gives us an adrenaline rush. It's actually addictive. We love scaring each other. We love controlled fear, simulated fear. When we know that we can turn off the TV, put the book down, walk out of the theater. And some people might say, "Oh, you told a ghost story in church. How inappropriate, perhaps even blasphemous." But yet I want you to think about the churches across our nation that are telling horror stories today, that they scare their people with. Visions of hell, of the end of days, of a coming apocalypse, and that going to their church is the only avenue of safety. Now that actually works. If your church preaches fear, you normally have a larger congregation and a stronger tithing base. So it seems we're doing something wrong. Now, how many of you seen the TV show The Walking Dead? Is anybody a fan of that? You know, the scariest thing that I have watched in my past was the Twilight. What is that called? The Twilight? Yes. I mean, it just creeped me out. I'm such a sissy. But I started watching The Walking Dead, and one of the opening scenes is just almost unforgettable. The world's population has largely turned to zombies, leaving alive just a few humans who are fighting to exist. And a sheriff sees a little girl walking away from him, and she stops to pick up a teddy bear, and her long blonde hair is hanging down. And he calls out softly, wanting to help her, not wanting to scare her. and she turns slowly around, and part of her face is gone, and she's a zombie. So what is it about small children that are so scary? What about dolls and clowns? Things of innocence that turn out to be evil. One of my favorite characters in The Walking Dead is a devout Christian man who is going through a faith crisis as events happen that he didn't think were going to happen. And as he contemplates all the zombies in the world, he says, "When Jesus spoke about the resurrection of the dead, I thought he had something a little different in mind." Now, as scary as it is to think about a child who would kill a playmate on purpose, what about a being who holds the power to your eternal destination, who heals and answers prayer and comforts those in distress, and yet is capable of sending fire and plagues and famine and starvation to millions? Why do we invest our image of God with the ability to murder? These stories of apocalypse and the end of days are woven through our culture. Most of us grew up hearing hints of it. Secular culture is awash with tales of the demise of humankind, sometimes of the planet, of close calls with disaster, aliens, asteroids, world war, weather that spirals out of control. I think part of it is wrestling with our own mortality, the heavy knowledge that life is fleeting and fragile, that we inhabit a small dot in a vast galaxy. Our days are short, and we have no guarantee of tomorrow. In fact, I wonder if this isn't a large part of why people are drawn to religions that claim they have all the answers. Religions that claim knowledge of the future, of perfect knowledge of the mind of God. Alison Noel said, "You should never fast forward into the future, because every time you do, you rob yourself of the journey, the present moment, which in the end is all there really is." Now, for those of you who don't understand biblical prophecy, I just compiled a short list of what you have to believe in order to think that a rapture and an apocalypse is coming from a Christian perspective. Now, you have to believe that the God of Abraham, the God that dealt with the Jewish people, guided the prophets to write the books of the Old Testament perfectly. You then have to believe that God turned from the Jews to the Gentiles, and that God sent Jesus to proclaim a further truth. You have to believe that God overshadowed the men who wrote the books of the New Testament, that God guided the Catholic theologians to choose the right books and translate correctly all the old languages. And then whatever version of the Bible you think is correct, you have to believe it is inerrant. You then need to study all Scripture from Old and New Testament that sounds like it's predicting coming events. Then from there, you probably have thousands of disagreeing visions and interpretations. It always fascinates me when people set a date for the rapture, especially if those dates are pretty close in the future, because so far all of those have been wrong. So if you want to predict a date, my advice is to be very fuzzy about the details, kind of like Nostradamus. He was so vague, he could have been saying anything. Now, if you think that only a small number of Americans believe in the rapture and apocalypse, think about the Left Behind series of books, which sold 65 million copies. It spawned 40 books written for teenagers. which predicted famines and war, and a vision of Jesus shooting bolts of lightning out of his eyes, burning people to a crisp. How cheerful. Someone developed a video game on this premise, which gave the game player the task of converting everyone to Christianity. If all else failed, you could use the guns and the tanks, but the player lost points if they killed an unbeliever, but it was there as an option. There are whole industries selling to people scared of the coming apocalypse, survival supplies, preachers on TV selling gold coins. Did you know that they make waterproof Bibles? I mean, really? I'm afraid if you need a waterproof Bible, something in your plan's gone wrong. But the incredible amount of money that people spend on survival gear and storable food is incredible. Surely, if there was a first world problem, that would be it. There are starving children, and yet we are hoarding food. For me, it seems that to believe in all this, and many years ago I did, you have to narrow your thinking. You can't care about millions in hell. You can't worry about innocents dying of famine or families devastated by plague. You have to swallow a vision of God so vengeful that he's willing to wipe the earth clean of anyone who disagrees with him. In my experience, this view can often lead to lack of concern for a planet because it's going to burn anyhow. A lack of concern for interfaith work because those people are going to be discarded. The hungry should trust in God. The poor should wonder if they're being tried for a lack of faith. People become disposable. Is this healthy? I have a friend who attended a church that taught that children had to reach a certain age or they could not go in the rapture. This friend of mine told me growing up in this tradition, her parents constantly talking about it. She said she was so terrified that she secretly kept a backpack of food hidden in her closet in case she woke up one morning, her parents gone, and she would have to face apocalypse alone as a 7-year-old. I can't imagine, although I have been through it, the fear that causes. It reminds me of the story of Corrie ten Boom, a woman in Holland who with her elderly father and her sickly sister hid Jews in their home during the Holocaust. She kept a little black bag packed with vitamins and medicines, thinking that if they were arrested, she could take care of her sister. And when the Nazis came to arrest the family, she had left that little black bag sitting in front of the panel that led to the hidden room where the Jews were. And she had to leave it behind, not wanting to draw attention to that panel. The fear that she must have gone through would have taken a bodily toll on her health. And yet I wonder, is fear of something that is a perceived threat, does it also cause bodily harm? It is not only Christians that have a view of end of days, but Muslims and Jewish people have their own view of coming wars and the position that God will vindicate their beliefs and their claim on being God's chosen people. It is scary when these beliefs reach into the political realm of our senators and people who firmly believe, and possibly a few past presidents, that coming apocalypse was necessary. I read a book about talking about the final war between the three faiths as a possibility, not as fulfilled prophecy, but because of the efforts of the believers in all three faiths who sincerely believe this is a future that must happen. A war of the faithful, where each faith believes they are on the side of good. But because we're a people who examine every side of the issue, or at least we try to, I'm going to discuss our fascination with apocalypse. Do you think we don't have any? For us, it is rapid, irreversible climate change, pollution that changes the very planet we live on, global war that could make vast swaths of land uninhabitable, capitalism that chokes our country into a shell of liberty, a political climate that might make religious freedom impossible, laws that hinder the freedom of choice, and religion that shapes our government, genetically modified crops, toxic chemicals in our everyday products. I suppose that fear is a normal human emotion. Eckhart Tolle wrote, "The past gives you an identity, and the future holds the promise of salvation, of fulfillment in whatever form, but both are illusions." I knew a man who was Unitarian Universalist, and he told me that by 2012, you see, he set a date wrong. He said our planet would be as hot as Mars, that it was too late, it was irreversible, it was hopeless. He stopped coming to church, and he became a little bit reclusive. These fearful worldviews can happen to any of us. And I wonder if the secret doesn't lie in balance, in recognizing possible dangers, working for justice, and yet being careful to enjoy life, to be thankful for love, to feed your inner heart with goodness and light. It doesn't require putting your head in the sand to be happy. It just takes balance. E.H. Chapin said, "Tomorrow may never come to us. We do not live in tomorrow. We cannot find it in any of our title deeds." The man who owns whole blocks of real estate and great ships on the sea does not own a single minute of tomorrow. Tomorrow, it is a mysterious possibility, not yet born. It lies under the seal of midnight, behind the veil of glittering constellations. When people receive the news that they only have a short time to live, they often speak of regrets, of working too much, of not spending enough time with family, regrets that they didn't express their feelings. They didn't tell someone that they loved them. They didn't follow their heart. Their eyes are often opened to the simple joy of sunlight shining through the hospital window, the simple beauty of a flower in a vase by the bed. Buddhist teachings remind us to be present in the here and the now, for it is all we have. And this might be simplistic. This might not be enough. But listen to this little story. The fire crackled the first of the fall season. My seat was soft and comfortable, and the smell of cinnamon was wafting through the air. Music was playing softly, and I recognized the old tune, evoking memories and rolling back the mists of time. The sweet violins played in gentle, wistful harmony. I closed my eyes and I saw my mother, her dark, curly hair shining remembered the smell of her perfume, Chanel No. 5, the scent that always brings a lump to my throat. She was sitting on the edge of my bed, singing to my brothers who were 4 and 5, which would have made me somewhere around 7 or so. We loved to push our 3 twin beds together to make one big bed, and there we would lie in a row, blonde-haired munchkins, as our mother sang us to sleep. She loved Hollywood musicals, and she knew all the words. Her soft alto voice, trained by the sweet Adelines, lulled me as I snuggled under the blankets. Irving Berlin's 1954 song, as true today as when it was written. When I'm worried and I can't sleep, I count my blessings instead of sheep. I fall asleep counting my blessings. When my bankroll is getting small, I think of when I have none at all, and I fall asleep counting my blessings. I think about a nursery, and I picture curly heads, and one by one I count them as they slumber in their beds. If you're worried and you can't sleep, just count your blessings instead of sheep, and you'll fall asleep counting your blessings. Amen. As in the tradition of our church,